Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video where we are in the international break, unfortunately. But that means some FPL managers will have a lot more time to look at their potential transfer targets going into Game Week 4. So we're going to go through some of those targets that you guys are looking to bring into your transfers and bring into your team and tell you what we think. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Okay, then, so to kick things off, we're going to talk through some £4.5 million defender options that we think are decent going ahead into the future game weeks. Starting off with Lewis Dunk. Obviously, the next two fixtures for Brighton are prime. They're Ipswich at home, Forest at home. They then go to Chelsea away, which I don't think is too bad of a fixture either. So far this season, obviously, Brighton have only kept one clean sheet, and that was against Everton on the opening day. They have conceded quite a bit of XG, but they have played Man United and Arsenal in those fixtures, so you can sort of understand why. Only the 2 goals conceded from them, which I think is really good. They've looked a lot more defensively solid. I know the Arsenal game you can't really take too much from because obviously Rice got sent off, but I think they have looked decent. And in general, Lewis Dunk has had decent expected goal involvement as well, with 0.31 over the 3 games. So I think in terms of a centre half, maybe getting a few attacking returns, I think Lewis Dunk you could probably put up there as one of the most likely. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, really like Lewis Dunk as an option. Of course, like the goal threat is there somewhat, but I don't think you can expect that every week. I think you're likely to get a 2 or 6 pointer and not too much more. But I think he's a really decent option in terms of the fixtures that Brighton have got coming up. The way that they're playing at the moment, without the European commitments, they're going to be very good this season. And Lewis Dunk's at the forefront of that. If it's anyone getting an attacking return from a corner, it's going to be him. So yeah, really like him as an option. One clean sheet in the first 3. It's not the end of the world considering. So let's see how he gets on. But I'd definitely be interested in having him in my team.
So next up in the £4.5 million defenders is Leif Davis. He's in my team currently and has obviously got the attacking return in game week 3. In terms of the expected goals against, I think you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. They did face Liverpool and Manchester City in their opening 2 fixtures. I think the Fulham game was a good representation of what we might see from Ipswich. Quite 50-50, especially at home. They're definitely going to put up a fight in those fixtures. In terms of expected goal involvement, nearly hitting 0.4 so far this season, which went again when you take into account their fixtures in the opening 2. I think that's good numbers from someone who we know has fantastic attacking threat. What's your thoughts on Davis, Ben?
Yeah, I like him as an option. I'm aware of the away fixtures that they've got coming up. The fixtures aren't the easiest for Ipswich, and I think you're going to get the attacking returns when Ipswich are playing at home for sure. It's just the kind of team that they are. I'm not as keen on him just because of sort of the fact that you're sort of going for a promoted player there. So I think there's an element of risk that you have to take into account. But of course, you can't disregard the number of attacking returns that he got last year as well. So it's one to bear in mind and sort of keep considered. I think a nice alternative as well, if you're looking for a really attacking fullback, is potentially someone like Ryan Aït-Nouri at that price point. But again, in a team that's sort of conceding a lot of XG. So as soon as we see those defensive numbers improve, then of either team, then you can sort of make a good judgment on which one of those two might be sort of the good attacking fullback at 4.5 to go for.
Okay, so our third and final £4.5 million defender that we're talking about today is Wesley Fofana. Again, fixtures for Chelsea are pretty solid going forwards. He's not been included in Chelsea's Conference League squad, meaning that he's going to be pretty nailed in those Premier League fixtures as long as he stays fit, which has obviously been a big problem for him so far in his career at Chelsea. Fixtures there, probably not the easiest, to be honest, in terms of a clean sheet aspect. Bournemouth away, West Ham away, Brighton at home. I think the FDR definitely is playing tricks on FPL managers this year because there's some difficult fixtures in there. Chelsea so far this season, their expected goals isn't too bad, I don't think, considering they have played Man City in one of those games at just over 3 expected goals against. 5 goals conceded though, so there are leaking goals, no matter how we put it. What's your thoughts on Chelsea defence, Ben? Would you be looking at that as a potential alternative to one of your options?
I think you can, but I also think that, as a wild card player, this is much more appealing to managers than you would if you weren't on a wild card, just because this is a much more long term strategic pick than one of those short term picks that you maybe would pick up if you were sort of just using your free transfers. you're looking at Fofana. He's not going to be playing in European competition until January at least for him. So you just got to bear that in mind, because he'll get the minutes in the Premier League now. That should be guaranteed. And you're sort of looking to hold this probably until like the second half of the season. So yeah, this is one that for those that are specifically wildcarding, I think is a really great option.
So moving on to some Liverpool assets. Staying in defence though, we've got Ibrahima Konate, slightly more expensive than the ones that we've spoken about at £5 million, but it's getting you into that Liverpool defence for the cheapest price possible. Obviously, he's only had 2 clean sheets so far this season and not the 3, because he came on at half-time against Ipswich. In terms of the expected goals against, it's quite interesting because he's actually got more expected goals against than someone like Trent, because Trent's been getting subbed off early in every single game so far this season. So, yeah, interesting that. Obviously, when Conor Bradley and Tsimikas are coming on, they are conceding a few more chances. But yeah, for me, I think if you're trying to get some coverage in that defence, you can't really get up to Robbo or Van Dijk or even Trent himself. I think this poses a nice little option, right, Ben?
Yeah, it does indeed, and I think he's a decent option, a decent price point, not too expensive with really good fixtures. So a lot of sort of ticks in the boxes there, so to speak. And I think he's nailed on for the foreseeable future there. The performances have been good. He seems to have played his way into that team under Arne Slot. The sort of goal involvement is going to be quite low for him, and I think you can expect a lot of 6-pointers from him, but it keeps you ticking along. And at 5 million, like, it's a very decent price point, considering like when you're looking at sort of other elite teams in the Premier League like Arsenal and Manchester City, you're paying sort of upwards of 5.5 million at a minimum to get into their defences. So this is a good value option here.
So as I mentioned about Trent Alexander-Arnold, slightly lower expected goals against for him so far this season, but it's the XGI is why you'd pay that £2 million more. 1.7 in the opening 3 fixtures is ridiculous, and the fact that he hasn't got a return yet is a little bit mental. Again, 3 clean sheets, you can't complain about that. I guess you sort of take the rough with the smooth. They probably could have conceded in one of those fixtures, but he hasn't got the attack and return just yet. Would you justify the extra 2 million over Konate for that attacking threat, Ben?
Yeah, I potentially would, just because of how attacking he's looked. He's obviously sort of had a goal disallowed as well, so you've got to bear that in mind. And if we were talking about this and Trent had that goal allowed, it'd be like no brainer. So I think you've got to bear that in mind and say, look, he is getting into positions where he's looking at scoring, assisting, getting attacking returns. So the stats are proving it and underlying it. I would say he's probably worth that 2 million extra over Konate.
Yeah, definitely agree. Even when we were at the game for Man United versus Liverpool, he was so more advanced than Andrew Robertson. It's definitely almost like a 3 at the back with Trent pushing on the right hand side, which allows Salah to come inside. So yeah, from a tactical perspective, Arne Slot is definitely putting him a lot more further. And if it's a decision between Robertson and Trent, there's no question that you should be going for Trent. Okay, so keeping the theme of Liverpool, we're going with Diogo Jota at 7.6 million. Obviously, he blanked in game week 3 against United, but has been returning in the previous game weeks. He's been involved in more big chances than Luis Diaz so far this season, so maybe a case of him getting a little bit unlucky from a traditional, really clinical finisher. What's your thoughts between the two, Ben, at the moment? Would you say there's one performing better than the other, or would you pick one over the other at the moment?
At the moment, I probably wouldn't pick one over the other. We saw a really limited goal involvement from Jota against United in game week 3, but that's because of the tactical plan of Liverpool for that game on getting it out wide to wingers and producing chances from there. It's definitely going to be dependent on who Liverpool are playing, on which Liverpool assets are going to do well. All 3 of them on any given game week can score and haul, so you've just got to sort of weigh up the options. And we thought at the start of the season Jota was going to have sort of some minutes concerns, but I think he's fairly nailed on. And at 7.6, it's good value there. He's so clinical. His stats last season were matching Salah in terms of points per 90, etc. So yeah, I think any one of those 3 Liverpool assets you've probably got to have in your team, if not 2 of them.
Okay, then. So talking about attacking good fixtures, the next 2 game weeks, these assets that we're about to talk about are the prime candidates to get into your team. We're starting off with Minte at 5.5 million, Ipswich at home and Forest at home in their next two. I think even Chelsea away fixture doesn't really pose a red threat in terms of attacking fixtures for Brighton. Anyway, 205 minutes played so far. I wouldn't be too worried about that being on the low side. Obviously, he was taken off at half time due to concussion protocol in game week 1. So bear that in mind a little bit. He's got 2 assists so far this season. His XA is quite high, nearly hitting 1 XA for the season so far. Lower goal threat than maybe some of the other assets, but it is definitely still there. And when you watch him on the eye test, really fast, really dangerous player that we've seen so far this season. And those stats are also considering that he's played Arsenal and Manchester United so far this season. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, really excited, and sort of one that's definitely on my radar. I think some FPL managers are missing a trick with him by going with Morgan Rogers over him. I think that there's a potential that he could sort of outperform him over the next few weeks, even despite those really good Aston Villa fixtures. He looks really good in terms of his assist potential, and the attacking threat is there for him. Let's see how Brighton get on, and like we always are sort of repeating, there's no European football for Brighton, so they're going to remain consistent throughout the season in terms of their performances, I think. So, yeah, I'd definitely look at having at least another one Brighton player. I'm going to assume a lot of FPL managers have João Pedro already. Like, bringing in another one for these 2 fantastic fixtures that they've got coming up is definitely sort of a way to sort of gain a bit of sort of an upside compared to all the other FPL managers out there.
Okay, and then looking at a more expensive option in that Brighton and midfield is going to be Kaoru Matoma, 6.6 million so far. He's obviously got a goal and an assist. So the goal threat with Matoma is slightly higher with him at the moment. The fixtures again really really good. So I think having one or the other in between Minte and Matoma could provide good value for the next 2 weeks at the minimum. What's your thoughts, Ben? Would you pay the extra for Matoma, or do you think Minte could outperform him equally?
I probably would pay the extra for Matoma just because of the goal threat that he does possess. But with a lot of FPL managers, if you're looking to squeeze in Palmer, Haaland, Salah into your teams, you may be forced to go with Minter. So it's really dependent on your squad structure and how it looks at the moment, because a lot of managers, wouldn't transfer out Eze for someone like Matoma just because of the sort of numbers that he's putting up as well at the moment. So it is all dependent. If you've got that extra budget to be able to stretch to Matoma, I would go for him. But a lot of managers are going to be in the position where they can't really afford to get up to Matoma and will sort of have to settle for Minter. But I still don't think that is a bad option at all.
Okay, so as Ben mentioned, Morgan Rogers is on this list as well, just due to those insane fixtures that Aston Villa have over a prolonged period of time. He's played 90 minutes in every single game this season, but hasn't got an attacking return just yet. I think the numbers there they're not disappointing, but they're just probably what you'd expect from a £5 million midfielder. I think a lot of people had a lot of hopes on that this £5 million bracket could provide insane value and would have someone starting at £5 million that's returning consistently. I just don't think it will turn out that way. I think, we might pick up a return maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks with Rodgers, but I think so far he has been unlucky, been involved in 2 big chances, assisting Ollie Watkins, and Ollie Watkins not taking those chances at the moment. On another day, we could be sitting here where Morgan Rogers has 2 assists and everyone would have him because he's like 5.4 million or something. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? You obviously mentioned that you thought Minte was a better option than him. Do you still think he's worth it as like an 8th attacker?
Yeah, I think he's still worth it. By no means, like he's 5 million. He's starting every week, and he has sort of some stats that back up what you'd expect from a £5 million asset. And the fixtures sort of speak for themselves and say, look, I think he is sort of worth having as an option in FPL. A lot of managers are going to have him. He's fairly highly owned now at sort of 14% at the time of recording. That will probably be pushing towards the 20% mark come the deadline, just because of how good those fixtures are. And like you said, if he'd had a couple of assists off those stats, people would be going, hang on, let's get him in, sort of thing. The casuals would be jumping on him a lot more than we thought. But there are better options at 5.5 if you can stretch it. But at 5 million, because of the budget constraints, again, I don't think you're going to get better than Morgan Rogers at that price point.
Okay, then. So as I mentioned, obviously Ollie Watkins missing some big chances so far this season. I think he's had 4 big chances missed so far this season, which is quite a lot considering he's not returned in terms of scoring a goal. The assist that he got was unbelievably lucky for him to even be called an assister in that scenario with that 0.01 XA that he's managed to accumulate from it. So yeah, I think definitely he's not looked to his best of ability. Obviously, he's been given sort of almost like an extended break over the international break with him not going to England, same as Cole Palmer as well, and Phil Foden. So hopefully that will help him maybe get a few more minutes, because I think that's another concern for owners, that he's obviously been getting taken off at 60, 65 minutes, which, you know, when John Duran is scoring goals, it does pose a bit of a risk. Obviously, Watkins has dropped in price now down to 8.9 million. So could look quite enticing for managers that don't own already at that cheaper price point with, you know, arguably some of the best fixtures in the league out of all teams. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, I own him, you don't. You'll have a lot less biased view, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I would go for him. At the moment, given the state of play in FPL at the moment, with those big assets at sort of 10 million plus really performing well, and for just 1 million less, you're getting an asset that seems to be sort of underwhelming in terms of performances, missing chances, and being somewhat at a minute's risk to John Duran. I don't think he's going to be sort of replaced in the starting lineup, but those minutes will keep decreasing if Duran keeps scoring off the bench. That's only natural that's going to happen. So, you know, over the next couple of weeks, we could see sort of a sub 60-minute sub, but, you know, you just don't know. So there's always an element of risk, but we do know how good Watkins can be. And we have known that he needs a high volume of chances to get goals. We've seen this last season, and that should be no surprise to us. So let's just wait and see. For me, he's a hold if you have him, but I wouldn't buy him if you don't have him.
Yeah, and obviously one thing that we haven't mentioned as well is that Villa have Champions League football, which we saw them in the Conference League last year, but I think this does pose a different sort of ball game for them, seeing who sort of gets more minutes in the Champions League. So obviously it's going to be massive for them, with lots more games as well this year in that new format. It's going to be really, really interesting. I think not even just for Villa, but for all European sides, how they sort of manage the workload between the Champions League or European competitions and the Premier League. Loads more games. So yeah, it's going to be interesting with the rotation. Okay, so we're going to take a look at Yoane Wissa up next. At 6.1 million, he's looking at a decent budget forward for those, obviously, as Ben mentioned, if you're trying to cram in Salah, Haaland, Palmer, Saka, whoever you want, this is going to be a nice little alternative to you. The FDR on the graphic is a little bit wrong. City's not a green fixture away, despite what some may think. But yeah, City away, Tottenham away. Not the best of fixtures at the moment for Brentford, but after that West Ham game, they do get a lot easier for Brentford, and for a sustained period of time. They've had quite a tough run to start the season, so they're probably due some decent fixtures after that. In terms of the expected goal involvement, it's looked really good. He's got 3 goal involvements so far this season as well. I think he's a decent option. He's not going to be that talismanic figure like Brian and Buemo, but he's also over $1 million cheaper, I think. So I think there's definite reason to go for him. Potentially also alongside Buemo. I wouldn't be opposed to a double up, just probably not right now. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, like a lot of managers won't be looking towards him currently just because of those tougher couple of fixtures coming up away from home for Brentford. Like, they've had a tough start to the season, but as soon as they get those games out of the way, I think people will start opening themselves up to going on one or maybe even 2 of these sort of Brentford assets. The stats are there. The stats look good. Obviously, they haven't slowed down in terms of attacking output since Tony has left. So, you know, they've almost been used to that for half of last season as well. So I do think he's a fantastic asset, budget enabler to get those bigger assets into your team.
Okay then, so the final player on our list today is going to be Cole Palmer. He's obviously had a price rise to 10.6 million. I think when putting these graphics together, it surprised me how many attacking returns that he had compared to someone like a Mo Salah. See, Salah's got 3 goals, 3 assists. Palmer's not too far away with 1 goal, 4 assists. I think this season we're seeing a lot more assist threat from him in particular. I know obviously that Wolves game probably inflates his stats a little bit. I think he got 3 assists from like 0.5 expected assists, which is, massive overperformance from him. But these premium assets tend to always overperform their data. That's why they are at these prices. For me, I think he's probably the third best premium after Salah and Haaland at the moment, especially given the fixtures as well for Arsenal. I think Saka comes in as a close fourth. What's your thoughts on Cole Palmer at the minute, Ben? Do you think he's close to becoming essential?
Yes and no. Like, I think the fixtures sort of lend themselves really well to Cole Palmer, but because Salah and Haaland are doing so well, it doesn't put him in the realm of essential, just because of sort of how well they're doing. It's a difficult one because a lot of managers are going to struggle to get Cole Palmer in if they don't have him already, and if they're not wildcarding, then it does make it a little bit more difficult. But with some of these cheaper assets that we've gone through now, there's potential of being able to shuffle around the team a little bit, especially if you've managed to sort of accumulate 2, 3, 4 free transfers, etc. To be able to go for someone like that, it's a decent option, and I do think he's going to sort of continue in terms of his attacking output and the numbers that he's getting. He will sustain that because we saw him sustain it for the whole of last season as well.
Okay then, so that wraps up our transfer plans video for today. Let us know who you're looking at bringing in for Game Week 4. Do you think there's some better options than the ones that we've mentioned? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, and as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.